The data packet arrived at 11:47 p.m., routed through 3 anonymizers and a mail server in Reykjavik. Mara almost deleted it. She'd stopped opening unmarked files years ago, back when the trolls first found her name on the patent filings. But the subject line was 6 numbers and a decimal point, formatted the way she used to format her own field logs, and something in her hands opened it before her judgment caught up. Title readings, 48 hours of them, time-stamped, sourced from a buoy array she recognized because she'd calibrated it herself 11 months ago, before the ribbon cutting. She read the first column twice. The numbers were breathing, not the ordinary rise and fall of a tide table, something tighter, more regular, a waveform that curled back on itself every 6.2 seconds. She knew that number. She designed around that number. It was the pylon's resonance frequency, the pulse that held the water at its new, obedient distance from the seawall. The sea shouldn't move to it. The sea was supposed to be held by it. She sat back from the desk. Through the window, 3 miles off, the breakwater lights burned their soft blue, evenly spaced, patient as a heartbeat monitor. She'd looked at that light 100 nights and felt something like relief. Now she watched it and thought,
"That's not stillness, that's rhythm."
Mom?
Eli stood in the doorway in the dinosaur shirt he refused to stop wearing, even though it barely covered his stomach now. 8 years old and already too observant for her comfort, the way he'd catch her staring at nothing and ask what was wrong before she'd noticed anything was.
"You should be asleep."
I can't.
He came in anyway, climbed onto the arm of her chair, the old habit from when he was small enough that the whole chair used to hold both of them.
Can I ask you something?
Always.
Why don't you ever talk about Dad?
The question landed strange, sideways, like a door opening onto a room she didn't remember owning.
I talk about your father.
Not really. Grandma talks about him. She told me he used to whistle when he made pancakes, this specific song, and I asked you what song, and you said you didn't remember. But you always remember things. You remember my shoe size from 2 years ago.
That's different. That's data.
You didn't even try. You just said you didn't know.
Mara opened her mouth to correct him, to produce the fact easily, proof that her son was wrong. He whistled this. He whistled that. Something specific. Something true. Nothing came. She reached for David's face the way you reach for a phone in the dark, expecting the familiar weight of it, and her hand closed on air. She knew the facts around him. Marine biologist. 6 years gone, cancer, fast and cruel. She knew he'd proposed on the pier before the line went in, when the pier still had water lapping under it instead of dry pilings and a rope railing for tourists. She knew all of that the way she knew a case file, dates and locations, cause and effect. But his face. She closed her eyes and tried to build it from parts. The shape of his jaw, the color of his eyes. And the parts refused to assemble. It was like trying to remember a language she'd once spoken fluently, and now could only gesture toward. She could describe the absence of the memory more precisely than she could describe the memory itself.
Mom?
I'm here. I'm sorry, baby. I think I'm just tired.
You always say that.
Because it's always true.
He studied her, the particular scrutiny that made him seem older than 8, older than she liked. Then he slid off the chair arm and padded back toward his room, and she heard his door close with the soft, deliberate click of a kid who wanted her to know he wasn't slamming it, that he was choosing not to. She sat very still for a long time after that. Then she went back to the numbers. The waveform repeated across all 48 hours without variance, clean as a metronome, and underneath the resonance frequency, there was a second signal, fainter, that her software wanted to read as noise. She isolated it, ran it through a filter meant for structural stress analysis, not because it made sense, but because it was the tool in her hand. The noise had shape, not words, not yet, but shape, rise and fall, pause and continuation, the architecture of something trying to be a sentence. She thought of the buoy array location and felt the small cold click of recognition. Pylon 12, the one closest to the old fishing pier, the one where, in the early tests, they'd lost a technician overboard during a storm swell nobody predicted, and the official report called it an equipment failure in the anchor cable, and she had signed off on that report because at the time it was the only explanation that fit the data she had. She had helped build this. She had stood in front of the city council 11 months ago and used the word safe 14 times. She remembered counting because someone had teased her about it afterward. And now she was looking at a signal that behaved like breath and thinking about the report she'd signed with a dead man's name still warm on the page. Her phone buzzed. A text, unlisted number. You felt it, didn't you? Ask what the resonance is actually resonating with. She stared at the screen until the light dimmed to save power, then stared at her own reflection in the dark glass instead. Down at the monitoring station 3 miles off, someone was awake at this hour too. Someone with access to buoy telemetry and a reason not to sign their name. She thought of Jonas Reed, the night tech, the quiet man who'd lost his wife to the water 2 years before any of this started, before there'd been a line to blame for anything. She'd spoken to him maybe 4 times in 11 months, always about equipment, never about anything that mattered, but she remembered the way he'd looked at the breakwater lights during the ribbon cutting, not with the relief everyone else wore like a new coat, but with something closer to suspicion. She'd noted it then and set it aside as grief, misdirected. She wondered now if she'd been the one misdirected. She opened the packet again and looked at the sender field, blank except for the routing, and thought, someone inside the system wants this seen and doesn't want to be the one who's seen showing it. That at least she could work with. Fear made sense to her. Fear had a shape she could analyze. The thing she couldn't shake was smaller and colder. Not the tide data, not the anonymous warning, but the fact that when she tried to remember her husband's laugh, what she'd actually loved about it, the exact pitch and cadence of it, she found instead a clean, professional blank. The kind of blank a report leaves when a fact has been redacted rather than simply forgotten. She had spent 11 years learning to distrust silence in the data. She was only now learning to distrust it in herself. Down the hall, Eli's light clicked off. The apartment settled into the specific quiet of a building full of people who finally, after 20 years, believed they were safe enough to sleep soundly. Mara sat at her desk, with the tide numbers glowing on the screen, breathing in time with something she had built and did not understand, and did not sleep at all. The alarm went off at 6. Mara had not slept, so it did not wake her. It only marked the moment she had to stop pretending the night had been useful. She closed the laptop on the impossible waveform and went to make coffee with hands that felt borrowed. Eli was already at the table, dressed for school, eating cereal with the particular focus of a boy who has decided not to look at someone, his hair stuck up on one side. She almost reached to smooth it and stopped herself, because the last time she had touched him without thinking, 3 days ago, he had flinched.
You didn't come say goodnight?
I was working.
You're always working now.
There's a problem at the station. It's important, Eli.
Dad used to say that too, about the fish counts.
The sentence landed wrong. Not because it was unkind, Eli rarely aimed to be unkind, not yet, but because she reached for the memory it summoned. David hunched over spreadsheets of spawning data, some specific evening, some specific joke he'd made about the fish counts mattering more than dinner, and found only the fact of it, the fact without the flavor. A caption under a photograph that had been removed.
What did he say exactly?
I don't know, something about the fish. Why?
No reason. Eat. You'll be late.
He studied her the way he'd started studying her lately, like a kid doing long division in his head, checking whether the numbers matched what he'd been told.
You forgot again. Something. You get a look.
Forgot what?
She wanted to tell him he was wrong. She had built a career on precision, on trusting data over feeling, and the data of her own son's face told her that he was not wrong, that he had been cataloging her gaps for weeks the way she cataloged drift in a sensor array, and that this, too, was a kind of report she had failed to read. She said nothing. He picked up his bag and left for the bus without saying goodbye, and the door did not slam, which was somehow worse. The monitoring station sat at the end of a causeway that hadn't existed 2 years ago, poured concrete over what used to be open water. One more small miracle nobody questioned anymore. Mara badged in at 9:14 with the encrypted packet on a drive in her pocket, feeling like she was smuggling something.
You're early.
You're late.
Couldn't leave. Buoy 9's been throwing the same anomaly since midnight. Recurring waveform 6.2 second interval. Matches the pylon frequency exact.
Show me.
He pulled it up without hesitation, no suspicion in it at all, which struck her as its own kind of data point. Either he didn't know what she was carrying, or he already knew everything and had decided that showing her was safer than hiding it. The graph on his screen was the same shape as the one on her laptop at 2 a.m. Not similar. Identical, down to the faint secondary ripple underneath. the one with structure too regular to be noise.
When did you first see this pattern?
Couple months back, told my supervisor. He said instrumentation drift, recalibrate and move on. I recalibrated 3 times. Drift doesn't repeat itself down to the decimal.
No, it doesn't.
He looked at her then. Really looked. The way he had at the ribbon cutting 18 months ago. The look she'd filed under grief and set aside.
You got something. You didn't come here for coffee.
She could lie. She had built a career on knowing when to withhold a variable until she trusted the room. But she was so tired, and he was the only person in 11 months who had looked at the breakwater lights like they owed him an explanation instead of gratitude.
Someone sent me tidal data last night. 48 hours from the buoy array, same waveform, plus a secondary signal underneath it. I think it's structured. I think it might be language.
Who sent it?
No name. Routed through 3 proxies I haven't cracked yet. You wouldn't know anything about that.
No, I wouldn't.
She let it sit there between them, the lie or the truth of it, unresolved, because pushing now would close a door she might need open later.
Your wife, she died before the line went in.
2 years before. Water took her off the old pier during a swell. Everyone said it was the sea being the sea, back when the sea was allowed to be dangerous without anybody asking why. Funny thing is, I used to be able to hear her voice clear as anything. Lately I have to work at it, like it's behind glass.
The room went very quiet. Mara felt the floor of her own certainty shift a half-inch, the way it had at 2 a.m. when she'd reached for David's laugh and found a clean, redacted blank instead.
Same, my husband. I can't...
Jonas looked at her for a long moment, and something passed between them that wasn't quite trust yet, but was no longer just professional distance either. 2 people comparing the same wound from different angles, unwilling to name it out loud in a room with cameras in the ceiling.
There's a tech who used to work the buoys, left after the accident at Pylon 12, the one they called an anchor cable failure. She didn't believe that, and she didn't stay to argue about it.
Where is she now?
Don't know, but I know someone who might. You want my honest opinion, Mara? I don't think that's noise under the main signal. I think it's been trying to say something since the day we turned this thing on, and nobody's been listening because everybody's been too busy being grateful.
Her phone buzzed in her pocket. New message, no contact name. Same anonymous number as the night before. You felt it too. The gaps. Ask him what Pylon 12 actually cost. Then ask yourself what you're paying.
12. Tell me about 12.
He didn't answer right away. Outside, past the reinforced glass, the water lay flat and obedient and blue lit, breathing in on 6 seconds, out on 6 seconds, patient as something that had learned to wait a very long time. Jonas didn't answer right away. He crossed to the console, pulled a folder from beneath a stack of maintenance logs, and set it on the counter without opening it. His hand stayed on the cover a beat too long.
Her name was Dana Osei. She calibrated the outer buoys, same as you calibrated the array. She was on the barge the night 12 lost cable tension. Swell came up fast. Nobody's fault, they said. Anchor cable snapped, techs went in the water, they pulled everyone out but one.
The report said equipment failure.
The report said a lot of things. Dana filed an incident statement 3 days later. It didn't match the official version. 2 days after that, she was gone. No resignation letter. No forwarding address. HR marked her file inactive and moved on.
You've had this the whole time.
I've had it for 2 years. I didn't know what it meant until the frequency started repeating on 9.
His phone rang before she could ask the obvious question. What changed? He looked at the screen, exhaled through his nose, and let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately.
Yeah, I know the shift log's off. I was running diagnostics. No, I didn't clear it with anyone. I didn't think I needed to clear a diagnostic. Understood. They flagged the extra pull requests. Mine and yours both. Someone's watching the account activity.
Someone's always watching the account activity. That's the job.
Not like this. They didn't ask what I found. They asked why I was looking.
Mara filed that away the way she filed anomalies in test data. A discrepancy without an explanation yet. Something to circle back to. She had learned, over 11 months of being the woman who built the thing everyone thanked her for, that the questions people avoided were the ones worth keeping.
Pull the memory clinic intake numbers. City Health Portal, public reporting, last 2 years.
That's not our jurisdiction.
It's public data, Jonas.
He pulled it anyway. The numbers came up in a column beside the pylon's output log, and for a while neither of them spoke. Mara lined the 2 sets against a shared timestamp axis, the way she'd once lined stress readings against tidal load, looking for the place where one curve explained the other. She found it in under 10 minutes. Every spike in memory clinic complaints, spouses forgetting anniversaries, parents forgetting children's middle names, small quiet erosions reported to no one but a nurse taking notes, lined up almost to the hour with a rise in the pylon field's output. Not correlation in the loose, forgiving sense engineers use to be polite about noise. A near-perfect coupling.
Every time somebody forgets something, the output goes up.
A fraction of a percent. Small enough that nobody flagged it as anything but efficiency gain. We reported the efficiency gain in the quarterly review. I signed my name to it.
You didn't know what it was feeding on.
That's not the same as innocent.
Neither of them argued the point further. The room held the small, tired silence of two people arriving at the same unbearable number from different directions. A knock came at the outer door. Not the buzzer, the actual door. 3 knocks. Deliberate.
Nobody comes out here on foot.
He checked the monitor feed above the console. A girl stood at the gate, maybe 16, hood up against the wind, a satchel bag slung across her chest with a strap-worn pail at the shoulder. She looked directly up into the camera, like she'd expected it and didn't mind.
You know her?
No.
He buzzed her in anyway. She came through the second door still in her hoodie, dripping faintly from the causeway spray, and set the satchel on the counter without waiting to be asked to sit. Up close, she looked younger than 16, and older than that at the same time, the way people look when they've been carrying something too heavy for their age.
You're Mara Ellison.
Who are you?
Lila, I sent you the texts.
The GAPS message, the one about 12.
And the one before it. I've been recording the buoy frequency off my own rig for 8 months. Cheap hydrophone, second-hand amp. Nobody takes a 16-year-old's data seriously, so nobody flagged it as tampering with city equipment. I just listen.
Listen to what?
You'll hear it better than I can explain it.
She turned a dial. The recorder's small speaker crackled, then settled into the same low pulse Mara had watched roll across her own screen at midnight. 6 seconds on, 6 seconds off, patient as breathing. But underneath it this time, threaded through the pulse like a second voice under a held note, there was something else. Syllables. Not words exactly, not yet, but the shape language makes before it resolves into words, the way a voice sounds through a wall. Then, for 3 seconds, it resolved. A woman's voice, thin and warped, drawn out at the edges like tape stretched past its speed. Not shouting, almost gentle.
Dana.
Say that again.
It does that. Says names. Different ones. Different nights. I started writing them down. I cross-checked what I could. Obituaries. Missing persons. Old news archives. That one's the technician who disappeared after Pylon 12. Dana Osei. The water's been saying her name for 2 years.
That's not possible.
It's not the sea talking. It's the people it already took. That's what I figured out first, before I figured out the rest. It's not coming for the city from outside. Somebody's letting it in every time they forget a name, and it's not finished. I've got 3 more voices in the last 2 weeks that I didn't have before. One of them sounds like a man. I think he's saying Eli.
Behind the reinforced glass, the pulse ticked on, 6 seconds and 6 seconds, indifferent to what it had just cost her to hear. The name hung in the room longer than it should have. Mara's mouth went dry. Eli. Her son's name, said by a stranger's voice pulled out of water, out of a machine she had calibrated with her own hands. She thought, there are other Elis. It's a common name. She thought this the way she thought most things now, fast and thin, like a rope paying out over a drop she hadn't measured yet.
You're sure? You're sure that's what it says?
I'm sure it says something like it. I told you. Some of them resolve clean, some don't.
Jonas hadn't moved from where Dana's name had put him. He was still looking at the recorder like it might say it again if he stared hard enough. Mara had seen that look on herself 3 days ago, at midnight, at her own screen.
Play it again.
It won't help. I've played it 40 times.
Play it again.
She did. The pulse came up first, 6 seconds of low breath, then the thin voice threading under it, warped at the edges. This time it did not resolve into anything Mara could swear to. A syllable, maybe 2. Jonas exhaled like he'd been holding something back that had nothing to do with air.
That's not a confirmed name. You said yourself it doesn't always resolve. We don't build a conclusion on maybe.
I'm not building anything. I'm reporting what I heard. You're the one who wants it to be a maybe.
The room went quiet enough that Mara could hear the pylon field ticking behind the glass. Patient, unbothered, 6 seconds and 6 seconds, the same rhythm it had held for 11 months while she signed reports calling it efficient.
She's not wrong, wanting it to be a maybe.
You don't get to say that to me.
I'm not attacking you. I'm agreeing with you, actually. I wanted Dana's name to be a maybe for 2 years. I had the folder. I didn't open it. I told myself the report was inconclusive, so I didn't have to decide what I already knew.
You had her statement this whole time and you didn't read it.
I read it 3 nights ago.
That's not what I asked.
I know what you asked. You want everyone to move at your speed, Lila. Write it down, cross-check it, act on it tonight. Some of us have had 2 years of not acting, and we're not going to catch up in an evening because you walked 6 miles with a notebook.
Somebody has to act on it tonight. That's the whole problem. Everybody's had years. Nobody did anything with them.
Jonas didn't answer that. He looked toward the glass instead, at the pulse ticking through the dark water beyond it, and Mara understood that this was an old argument wearing new clothes. The technician who hoarded proof like it was safer sealed. The girl who thought proof unused was proof wasted. Neither of them was talking about Eli anymore. She let it sit. It wasn't hers to referee.
Show me the report numbers again, not the voices. The output. When did the field spike exactly against what memory events?
Lila flipped pages, found the graph she'd drawn by hand, dates down one side, small vertical bars beside them. Mara pulled up her own file on the station terminal, the efficiency curve she had submitted to review 11 months of gains, her name at the bottom of the report like a signature on something she hadn't read. She lined the two up. The correlation wasn't approximate. It was exact, spike for spike, timestamp for timestamp, the field gaining a measurable fraction every time a name went under.
I put this in a slide deck. I stood up in a conference room and told people the system was performing above spec. I used a laser pointer. I got a bonus for this.
You didn't know.
That's not the same as not doing it.
Nobody argued with that. The pulse ticked on behind the glass, indifferent, and for a moment all 3 of them just watched it, as if it might explain itself if they waited long enough. It didn't. It never did. It only kept its rhythm, 6 seconds and 6. The way it had kept it the night Dana O'C's statement went unread in a folder. The way it had kept it every hour since Eli asked his mother why she never talked about his father. Mara's phone buzzed. A text, unlisted number, same format as the others. Pylon 12 wasn't the first time. Ask Jonas who authorized the anchor swap. She turned the screen so Jonas could see it. He read it twice. Something moved behind his eyes. Fast. Gone before she could name it. Not surprise. Recognition.
Someone's still watching the account logs. My supervisor called an hour before you 2 showed up. Asked why I'd pulled diagnostic access outside my shift window. I told him instrumentation check. He didn't believe me. He also didn't push. That's new.
New how?
He usually pushes.
You think somebody inside knows what we know?
I think somebody inside has known longer than we have. I think that's how these things work. Somebody always knows first and decides it's safer to let it keep running.
Mara thought of Dana's statement, 3 years unread. Thought of her own report, signed and filed, the efficiency gain glowing green on a dashboard someone above her had certainly seen and certainly not questioned. The rope kept paying out.
We're not deciding that. Not tonight. Not with him.
I have to go back out tomorrow night. Buoy 9's due for a check. If there's a 4th voice by then.
You're not going out there alone again.
I've been going out there alone for 8 months.
That was before the water started saying your friends' names.
Lila didn't answer that. She looked at Mara instead, waiting, as if the deciding vote belonged to her. Mara looked past both of them, to the glass, to the pulse rolling through it, patient as a held breath, and thought of Eli asleep 3 miles inland, his door closed against her, his father's face gone soft and unreachable behind some redacted place in her memory. She thought he might already be in the water. She did not say it.
Nobody goes out tonight alone. Not tomorrow. Not after.
Behind the glass, the pulse ticked forward, unhurried, into its next 6 seconds. The morning came in gray, the way it had for 11 months. The sky pressed flat against the water like a lid. Mara didn't remember driving to the causeway. She remembered the decision, nobody alone. And then she remembered the console lights, and the space between those two things was gone, the way so many spaces were gone now.
She slept 4 hours. I checked the login time on her hydrophone rig, 2 a.m.
You checked her login time?
I check everyone's login time now. It's the only thing I can still do that feels like it matters.
I can hear you. I'm 16, not deaf.
I didn't say it to hide it.
You said it like I wasn't standing here.
The friction was old, Mara realized, watching them. Something worn smooth by repetition. The kind of argument two people have had enough times that the words barely matter anymore, only the shape of them. Jonas didn't trust anyone to go near the water without a witness. Lila didn't trust anyone to let her finish what she'd started alone, long before either of them believed her.
8 months. 8 months I did this by myself and nothing happened to me. The water didn't take anything from me. It took from people who weren't looking.
That's not proof it's safe. That's proof you got lucky.
Or it doesn't want me yet.
The sentence landed wrong, and Lila seemed to hear it land wrong because she didn't take it back.
We go together. All 3 of us to the boat, 2 of us stay on it. 1 checks the buoy from the platform. Nobody's in the water alone. Nobody's on the boat alone. That's the whole rule.
Fine, but I do the check. My hands know the rig.
Jonas didn't argue. That was its own kind of admission. The boat ran quiet under the gray, engine kept low, wake folding back on itself in the flat water. Buoy 9 sat where it always sat, a low orange shape rocking with a patience Mara found herself distrusting now, the way she distrusted the pulse behind the station glass, the way she distrusted her own memory of the mayor's ribbon cutting, the microphone, her hand near it though she couldn't now say what she'd said. Lila went over the side onto the platform ladder with the ease of someone who had done this so many times the fear had worn a groove and settled into it. Jonas killed the engine. The silence that followed had weight.
I pulled something else last night, after you left. I went into the old procurement records, anchor cable specs for 12.
Mara's stomach tightened before her mind caught up to why.
And?
The swap order, the one that changed the cable rating 6 weeks before the incident, it has an approval signature. It's not mine. It's not Dana's. Yours.
The water made a small sound against the hull, patient, unhurried.
I never approved a cable swap.
I know. I pulled the metadata. The signature's yours, the timestamp's yours, but the login session originated from an admin terminal you've never had credentials for. Somebody used your name. Before the array went operational. Before any of this had a reason to need your name.
That's 11 months before I got the packet.
I know.
Something in her chest that had been holding steady since the conference room, since the laser pointer and the green line on the dashboard, gave a little, quietly, the way ice gives before it breaks. No sound yet, just the first admission of weight.
Someone built me into this before I ever touched a keyboard.
Or someone built the system and need a name it could use later. Yours was already in the files. Senior enough to be believed. Available enough not to be questioned. It's not proof of who authorized the actual function. It's proof somebody wanted a paper trail that led to you specifically and not to them.
Mara thought of the report she'd signed. The bonus. The dashboard glowing green under her own laser pointer while she called catastrophe a calibration variance, and 40 people nodded, and someone in a back row. She remembered now with a clarity that frightened her. Someone had clapped first, before anyone else. A beat too early. The kind of clap that starts an ovation rather than joins one. She hadn't thought about that clap in 11 months. She thought about it now like a held breath finally let go.
I want a name, not a theory. A name.
I'm working on it. It's slow. Every terminal that could tell us is logged and audited, and the audit trail is...
Also mine, isn't it?
Jonas didn't answer, which was an answer. On the platform, Lila had gone still over the open panel, one hand braced on the housing, head bent close to the speaker grill the way she did when the water was saying something she needed to hear exactly right.
Lila, anything?
She didn't answer either, and that silence was worse than his had been.
Lila.
There's a 4th one. It's not clean. It's under 2 other names, layered, like it's trying not to be found. It's not a full name, just the first part. Repeating.
What part?
L. Just L. Over and over, like it stopped before it finished, or like it's waiting to.
The engine idled under them, patient as the water, patient as the pulse behind the glass 3 miles east, ticking forward into whatever came at the end of its next 6 seconds. The Gratitude Festival started at noon with a marching band and ended, for most of Port Meridian, before it truly began. Blue light strung the seawall in loops. Vendors sold commemorative buttons shaped like pylons. The mayor stood on a stage built over the old flood markers, thanking the engineers, thanking the sea, thanking God in that order, and the crowd clapped in the wide, loose way crowds clap when they've stopped counting what they're grateful for. Mara watched from the service stairwell behind the platform, a cable spooled over her shoulder, Jonas's laptop cold against her hip.
Access panels this way.
He didn't look at her when he said it. He hadn't looked at her directly in 20 minutes, not since she'd told him what she meant to do with the broadcast feed once they had it.
You still think I'm the one who signed the order?
I think somebody used your name. I never said it was you. But you people had 5 years of warning on the erosion models before any of this. My reports. Buried under a company memo calling me alarmist. So forgive me if trust doesn't come cheap.
He said it low, fast, the words worn smooth from being carried a long time. It wasn't about the pylons. It was older than the pylons, and she understood that even now, with the platform trembling faintly under 6-second pulses, some grievances kept their own schedule.
I didn't write that memo.
I know. I looked it up. Different signature. But you were in the building.
That was as close to forgiveness as he had in him today, and it would have to do.
2 minutes to the mayor's toast. After that, they cut to the fireworks feed automatically. If we're going out, it's now.
Do it.
Lila hit the switch. For 4 seconds, the crowd heard the mayor's voice cut mid-sentence and something else rise underneath it. A woman's voice, patient, saying her own name into a machine that had swallowed her 2 years ago. Then a second voice. A third. The names arrived in order, unhurried, the way water arrives.
Dana Osei.
The crowd's applause died into something else. Then the sea answered. It didn't crash. It rose, level, deliberate, a single coordinated surge that walked up through the lower districts like water filling a tub, slow enough to watch, fast enough that no one could outrun it on foot. Cars floated free of curbs. String lights shorted and went dark in sequence down the boardwalk, block by block, following the water instead of running from it. The pulse behind the platform glass slowed. Then it spoke. Not from a speaker. From everywhere the water touched. Mara heard it the way she'd heard David's voice for years, folded into memory rather than air, except now it was borrowed. Dana's cadence, David's rhythm, a chorus wearing the shapes of everyone the city had already lost.
Keep the door open. The forgetting stops. No more names taken. Only stop trying to remember what is already ours.
Mara's hands went cold on the rail. It was a fair trade, in the way a fair trade always is when it's offered by something that has already taken the collateral. Eli would keep his mother whole. She would keep David's laugh, wherever it was hiding, if she simply stopped reaching for it. All she had to do was let go of the reaching. She thought of the clap that started too early. She thought of 40 people nodding at a slide she hadn't understood was a death count. She thought of Eli flinching from her hand 3 weeks ago, because he'd already learned, before she had, that something in her kept leaving the room even when her body stayed.
Mara.
She leaned into the open channel and started saying names.
David Chen, my husband. He laughed too loud at his own jokes, and it embarrassed me in restaurants, and I loved it. Dana Osei. She wrote down what actually happened at Pylon 12, and she didn't get to see anyone believe her.
Jonas said his wife's name himself, low into the mic beside her, the first time in 2 years he'd said it out loud without his voice going somewhere else. Lila read from her notebook, name after name, the ones she'd spent 8 months cross-referencing to obituaries nobody else had bothered to check. The resonance pattern that had held steady at 6 seconds for 11 months began to stutter. The pulse behind the glass climbed, spiked, climbed again, trying to hold its rhythm against a field suddenly full of names it had been promised it would never hear again. Then it broke. Not an explosion. A silence. The pulse simply stopped arriving. The water didn't recede all at once. It drew back the way tide always had before the pylons, slow and indifferent, leaving the lower districts wet and ruined and ordinary. The old honest kind of flood the city had spent a year forgetting how to fear. By morning, the mayor's office called it sabotage. Commentators called it 3 people who broke a miracle out of guilt or grief or vanity, and some of the city believed that, and some of the city, quietly, without announcing it, started keeping small notebooks, names, birthdays, the sound of someone's laugh written out in a clumsy attempt at phonetics, afraid of what else might already be gone and unnoticed. Mara found she could remember David's laugh again, clear enough to hurt, but she'd lost the exact color of the kitchen they'd stood in the last time she heard it. Jonas got his wife's voice back and lost the memory of their wedding day entire, a blank socket where a whole afternoon used to be. Lila stopped hearing anything at all when she put the hydrophone to her ear. Just water, ordinary and dumb, the gift that had cost her 8 months of sleep gone quiet forever. The sea did not speak again. It only sat at its old dangerous distance, patient the way it had always been, the way it would be for the next city that decided safety was worth more than what it remembered. Eli was awake when Mara got home, sitting on the stairs in the dark with a flashlight, waiting up the way he used to before he'd learned not to expect her.
You're wet.
I know.
Is it going to flood again like before?
Sometimes, yes.
He thought about that for a moment. The way he thought about everything now, carefully, like he was checking her answer against something he already half knew. Then he came down the last 3 steps and let her hold him. And this time, he didn't flinch.